It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Honorable Anthony J. Tata, who will kick off the 2026 MHS Conference. The Honorable Tata serves as the Undersecretary of War for Personnel and Readiness in the Department of War, acting as the Principal Advisor to the Secretary on military and civilian personnel, readiness, health affairs, education, and quality of life matters, all the really hard topics. A 1981 graduate of West Point, Mr. Tata served in the Army for 28 years before retiring as an esteemed general and combat veteran. During his distinguished military career, he commanded a paratrooper battalion in the 82nd Airborne Division and an air assault brigade in the 101st Airborne Division, and was the deputy commanding general of the 10th Mountain Division. Mr. Tata went on to hold leadership positions at the federal, state, and local levels of government, as well as executive roles in several private sector organizations. Today, he is proud to be back in the Department of War, serving our warriors, their families, and the department civilians. Please welcome to the stage, Honorable Tata.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is my microphone working? All right, great. If you needed any further evidence that the Defense Health Agency was fast and efficient, this simultaneous presentation of the colors and national anthem should serve as the final nail in the coffin, so, which I thought was awesome, by the way. What an honor to be here in front of all of you today. What a great turnout. I'm truly humbled to be standing up here in front of so many tremendous medical professionals and industry professionals serving our men and women in uniform, our department civilians, and of course, all of our families. I'd like to thank Katie. Where is Katie? Katie's got to be somewhere in here because she's running the show. This thing was supposed to take place in Minneapolis a few months ago. It got switched to Dallas. If you can imagine all the logistics involved in that. We're here, every seat is filled, and presumably everybody's got a place to stay. So Katie, thank you so much. Let's give Katie a round of applause. And I also want to thank Sierra Nichols for everything that she has done. She'll MC this, but she's also served with us for several years in DHA and the Assistant Secretary for Health Affairs. She's getting ready to move to Jacksonville, Florida, to take on a new role, a new assignment, and hopefully we'll get her promoted and into command or XO spot here or soon. But let's also give Sarah a round of applause. And, you know, an announcement that it's the best kept secret, I guess. Dr. Steve Farrar is leaving us, or has left us. Steve has left the room. I don't know, Steve's in here somewhere, but he right here, Steve, stand up. Steve was, you know, sort of my right-hand man for the first year, teaching me about everything health affairs, tremendous public servant, doctor, tremendously knowledgeable. He's going to go spend some time with his wife in New Hampshire, and certainly, Steve, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything you've done for not only DHA and the Assistant Secretary for Health Affairs in the role that you were acting, but for the broader community, service in the CIA. The White House learned of your departure, and they weren't happy, so I got yelled at, so thank you for that. And I said, look, I tried not to, tell him not to go, but he didn't listen to me. But Steve, you've been a great public servant all your career, and really, I just thank you from the bottom of my heart. Let's give Steve a round of applause. Yeah, we go to like I've been to Landstuhl, I've been to All Good in Korea, I've been to Tripler in Hawaii, I've been to Brooke Army Medical Center, see Chief Warrant Officer Slover. I've been in many of our medical facilities in this job and previously, and we talk about names like BAMC and Madigan and Tripler and all that, but it's the people, the Katies, the Sierras, the Steves of the enterprise here that makes it so effective and so good. It's all of you that comprise the Defense Health Agency, the Assistant Secretary for Health Affairs, and each of the services, and the Surgeons General in particular, and their senior enlisted advisors, whom I had the privilege of meeting over at DHA headquarters several months ago. It's your leadership that is what is making a difference here within the medical community, the military health system, which relies upon solid leadership and good advice from the senior enlisted advisors, because so many of our great medics and other personnel, planners, logisticians, come from the enlisted side of the house. And I think often because doctors are officers, we forget about them, and I certainly don't. I know how important Class 8 is on the battlefield as a commander in combat, regardless of whatever unit I was in, 82nd, 101st, 10th Mountain, et cetera. So I just want to thank you. And I had a really good conversation last night with Colonel Jennifer Gurney. I don't know where she is in here, but I said, what can we do to make the system better? And that was the wrong question to ask, because it was a long conversation. So essentially, my big takeaway was getting the right people in the right place, and it's really hard, and that's what we're trying to do. But having Colonel Gurney, Steve introduced her as the most experienced combat surgeon in the Army, which very well may be true. And so, I remember meeting Major Brooke Engelman over in Landstuhl, who had just operated on one of our wounded veterans or wounded active duty soldiers from Syria. Internally had been ripped apart. She stitched him up. That young man is living just fine right now, healing and recovering. And I just think of the amazing people that we have in our ranks, and I kind of have a hard time moving past that, because we have so many people, and I'm going to talk about a lot of things called the Patriot Pipeline and some other things. But when people talk about the defense industrial base, and if they're not talking about the healthcare community, they don't know what they're talking about, because you are a key component of the defense industrial base. And you can have all the Lockheed Martins in the world making all the, and Raytheons, and not to pick on anybody, but all the big contractors. But at the end of the day, if we're not taking care of our men and women on the front lines that are doing the fighting, or even not on the front lines that get rocketed or whatever, as we've seen in the current Epic Fury fight, if we don't have the medical teams in place to take care, then we're not, our warriors aren't going to have the confidence to do what they do. And like I've said before, and I said this in AMSIS, and I know many of you were there, whenever I would go into a combat operation, regardless of what unit I was in, I would tell I would gather my medics, and I would tell them, our trigger pullers can go do what they're going to do, because they know you're going to get there in the golden hour. And I remember, and the Sierras of the world appreciate this as medical planners, in Bagram, sitting there literally with a compass, drawing circles for the golden hour on a paper map to say, because I only had 10 or 11 HH-60s because this was 2006-07, what was going on in Iraq, the surge. So all the medevac assets had been sent over there, and we had Air Force PJs and we put medics on there that were serving as our medevac crews in Afghanistan. And the detail of Class 8, the helicopters, being able to get there in the golden hour to save the life of a wounded soldier, sailor, airman, Marine. That's the essence of what we're talking about here. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff, but at the end of the day, for me, as a former paratrooper, the net of everything that comes out of this is this giant organization that comes down to the very tip of the spear, where that medic with an aid bag has to apply life-saving measures to somebody who's wounded. And I know the entire organization is geared toward that, and that's what we need to make sure. A lot of people ask me, what else do you do, Tata, other than, go make speeches and stuff? And we have, I don't know, about 740 hospitals and clinics within this enterprise, but we also have 235 commissaries that we run within personnel and readiness. We have 160 schools, K through 12, formerly known as DODEA, now DOWEA, Department of War Education Activity, globally, Europe, Asia, and Southeast United States. We've got 16 universities, West Point, Naval Academy, Air Force Academy. Nobody knew that I was in charge of that until I asked the question, and then they pulled out the DOD instruction and said, Undersecretary for P&R is operationally in charge of the 3 service academies. The war colleges, Marine Corps, Air Force, Navy, Army, Space Force, charge of all of those. The fellowships that go to a variety of different schools. The senior military colleges, VMI, North Georgia, Norwich, Citadel, A&M, et cetera. All of that comes up under P&R, up through a variety of different entities. Have 600 child development centers, have 300 youth activity centers that sort of serve as that latchkey between the K through 12 schools and till mom or dad get off work from being a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, or guardian. So it's a vast enterprise, and also in charge. I'm going to go see the Dallas MEP station across the street here. We own MEPCOM, and we're responsible for the recruiting of 250,000 people every year and the transition of 250,000 people every year. So we own programs like SkillBridge and TAPS, and that is in our enterprise. And we are building something called the Patriot Pipeline. We have to call it Project Patriot Pipeline because some midstream oil company in Texas, here in Texas, has something called the name of their company is Patriot Pipeline. So, we're not stealing IP or anything. So it's Project Patriot Pipeline. But what we're talking about there is we're trying to bring in young men and women to serve in those key defense industrial base jobs. For us, high demand, low density within the active National Guard and Reserve, all 3 compos, we're trying to bring them in to fill key roles of high demand, low density, like healthcare, Patriot missile, cyber, shipbuilding, Golden Dome, et cetera. And once they're in, we want to retain them, and so the bonuses are aligned to keep them in those high demand, low density skill sets. And if they choose to leave, or if they're thinking about it, if they're even thinking about education, we're realigning tuition assistance to be able to cater to the defense industrial base, shipbuilding, Golden Dome. Think about aligning personnel policies with presidential priorities. And the secretary has focused on behalf of the president, on reinvigorating the industrial base, the defense industrial base, massive tour on the Arsenal of Freedom. And I was on several of these visits, and I kept thinking to myself, and I would go around, if the secretary and his team would make a right, I would make a left on the factory floor, and I'd just start talking to people. And I was at SpaceX, and I said, you just said that you're going to 10x the number of silos here. Where are you going to get the people from? And the engineer said, well, that's the big question. And so we had this spark and put the team together to say, how are we going to build out so that we pay, I don't know, $250,000 to $500,000 per trainee that comes in, let's say infantry, or medical, or whatever the skill set is. It goes probably from $250,000 to $1 million just on initial entry training if you're a pilot or if you're a nurse or whatever. And then why would we so blithely let that go? Because that's pretty much what we've been doing. We've been letting this big investment we've made go. And if they're going to leave, which is obviously, I know Sierra said lock the doors, nobody leave while Tate's speaking. So, which, is a good idea. But if we're going to train these people and we're going to teach them, we're going to give them the leadership experience, and they're going to do their 3 years, do their 30 years or whatever, why don't we just try to make it easier to steer them into the defense industrial base? If it's someone who's in the medical profession, let's get them somewhere that is near a base that is serving a military community, military-connected community, which, that could be Fayetteville, North Carolina, because everybody wants to go live in Fayetteville, and which is a great place, by the way. I live there. And that way you can serve families, and you can be in that defense industrial base, and you can, we will have retained, at least be benefiting from that training that we have delivered to you as the War Department. And to me, the Patriot Pipeline, I started out talking about people and thanking people for what because really that's the heart of this. And when you think about everybody in here who's serving, at some point in time you're going to transition, you're going to retire, and we need people to continue to serve in that defense industrial base. Scale and tuition assistance, scale and skill bridge, giving you more time on skill bridge if you're going to a DIB, defense industrial base, type of job. That's credentialing is one thing that we're talking about, making sure that we are paying for the credentialing and the continuing education that you need as a medical professional, for example. So this Project Patriot Pipeline is a big deal. The Secretary is going to be doing a video on it, and it's all about aligning personnel policies. And just think of me and my team as the big HR people in the sky, not like in that show, The Office. Who was the HR guy that everybody hated? Hopefully that's not me, but we handle all recruiting, all transition, everything to do with people. And on the Patriot Pipeline, we have a military spouse thread, work stream. So it's active, reserve, National Guard, it's department civilians, and there's military spouses. 3 work streams. Right now, our military spouses are at 20% unemployment. And my team said to me, sir, we want to drive that down by 5%. That's a good, achievable goal. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What's the national rate? Well, it's about 4%. I said, well, that's our goal. It's Why wouldn't our goal be 4% unemployment to mirror the national rate instead of, some arbitrary 5%, because you think it's something you might be able to achieve and put on an efficiency report? Let's try to get it all the way down. I understand SOFA agreements get in the way. I understand that frequent PCS moves get in the way. But, I was in Bahrain and talking to it doesn't matter. I could tell this story and change the profession or the name, and it's the same story. I was in Korea. I was in Bahrain. I was, in Hawaii, wherever I was, or Quantico. And a parent says, I am a X. I'm a dentist. I'm a teacher. I'm a whatever, and it's a military spouse, and it's at a military school, a Department of War Education Activity School, and they say, I entered my stuff in USA Jobs 8 months ago, and I can't get an interview. I can't get it hired. This was a dentist, a no-kidding dentist that was credentialed and licensed and everything. And there's a dental clinic across the street that needs a dentist, but I can't get hired. And that's how broken our personnel system is at the higher levels, I'll say. And so what we've done, we have to start a school year, and all those buildings I mentioned, 700 plus hospitals, 235 commissaries, 160 schools, 16 colleges, you got to turn the lights on those things every single day, 24/7 in some cases in the hospitals. And it's not like at the other end of the hallway, if you're the policy guy, which I was for a minute in the previous administration, you present different opinions and options. Well, we should do this about Russia. We should do this about Iran. We should do this. And it's important work, but it's not like you have to have people in the building and switch on the lights every single morning. We're running businesses at this end of the hallway, as I like to say. We're running businesses. We're running a K through 12 public school system. We're running 16 universities. We're running a hospital system. We're running a grocery chain. And so all of that requires business sense, leadership, and we've got a great team. And, as I think about how all of that applies to this audience, is that we've got over 700 hospitals and clinics, and I'm sure Keith Bass and the rest of the team are going to talk to you about, but we are absolutely focused on delivering the service to you like a business. And you are helping us do that. And our industry partners are helping us do that. And one of the things that we're doing is partnering with the Veterans Administration. And I'm totally, like my speechwriter might be watching this from somewhere, I'm totally not following my speech. It's over here on the thing. But the VA, couple of things. I was just talking with one of the vendors. I don't like to give shout outs to vendors or anything like that, just to be agnostic. But doing a great job, working on a service treatment record. We've got a project called Day Zero. From the day you're a soldier, sailor, airman, marine, or guardian, to the day you retire, ought to be 0 days. That's your PII. Those are your medical records. You ought to be able to take those with you and have them electronically in the cloud, and you ought to just be able to access them as you want. I mean, go figure in today's day and age. And so we're working through that, and I'm working very closely with Deputy Paul Lawrence at the VA, who's a great teammate and partner. And so that's one of the things we're doing. Another thing we're doing with the Veterans Administration is we've all talked about reps and sets and getting the right people in the right place. As a conversation I had last night, and I've had it many times before, about aligning skills, having people, we've got a service change request in with Congress to try to de-scope some facilities, for example, at Fort Gordon, and re-scope in other places to take doctors, nurses, medics, specialists, et cetera, and put them where they can get more, the famous reps and sets saying more exposure to more combat-like cases so that they can be trained and ready for combat. And so one of the things that we're doing is working very closely with the VA to establish partnerships. And we have 4 or 5 that are happening in the near future, and we have a couple that we've already done. I've visited Lovell in Chicago, and I've visited Tripler. They're the inverse of each other. Lovell's a VA that has some military, and then Tripler is military that has some VA in it. And the doctors get to see an increase in cases. And then you go to Allgood in Korea, and they have an entirely different problem than stateside. Their Fight Tonight mission, for a couple of weeks out of every 6 months, and there's probably some folks in here that'll come up and correct me afterward, but my takeaway from my very good visit there was the doctors have to go set up their pre-post sites for their Fight Tonight mission to train every couple of weeks, and that backlogs the specialty referral system or even the family care system, and instead of a couple of weeks to get an appointment, you're at 4 to 6 weeks to get an appointment, which is a big deal when you're on a 1-year tour or even a 2-year tour, and you've got your family there or not. And so they wanted more doctors, and so this de-scoping that we're doing makes a lot of sense. And from a macro planning standpoint, my conversations last night also made a lot of sense in that regard. So we are doing so much, and we testified 2 weeks ago. Time's running together. Maybe it was last week. Wednesday, Keith was there, and then Dr. Todd, my readiness assistant secretary, and then Tim Dill, the MNRA assistant secretary. And we got asked a lot of questions. Elizabeth Warren and Honorable Bass had a very nice conversation about Express Scripts, and he's over here shaking his head, smiling. It was. I look forward to you following up on that one, Keith. I plan to be out of the country when you do that. So, Senator Warren came up to me afterward, and we had a very nice conversation, as did Senator Kaine, and it was. But there was a big conversation about mold in there, and my first response was, "I'm not the facilities guy." And then, Senator Blumenthal said, "Well, it's a healthcare issue too." And I said, "No, I got it. Okay, I got that." And then, so I got to, have a conversation with the secretary, which I've already done. I have a follow-up with him about, the barracks task. We have so much mold in so much of our family housing, and the barracks that you just got to invest a chunk of money, rip that stuff apart, rebuild it, do whatever you got to do. But it's a Herculean task that needs to be undertaken, but it's impacting. All of you see it. All of you see the impact of some of these aging barracks that we have. And so, but by and large, I thought the hearing went extremely well. And so I'm going to check my notes to see if there's anything I've talked about my speechwriter wants me to talk about. I've discussed the VA partnerships. I've discussed Patriot Pipeline. And I think the last thing before I take questions, I would talk about is we have a very serious effort ongoing right now to onshore the production and manufacturing and production of pharmaceuticals to get away from dependency on China. The effort that we have, the Office of Strategic Capital is pressure testing it right now. We have a very serious proposal that's about 1,000 pages long. I want to say it's top 35 drugs that we're looking at having them make, and it's sort of a let's buy what we can right now and stockpile while we're brownfield upfitting brownfield places, whether that's in North Carolina, Florida, Puerto Rico, wherever, or all three, and begin to ramp up our capability to do raw materials, key starting materials, and active pharmaceutical ingredients. Those have been traditionally outsourced to China and India. We need to bring those in-house like we're doing with the rare earths. And I think that we've got a very good, serious proposal here. We just need to get it through the money geniuses and the bureaucracy and be able to get that thing started. And we will wean ourselves off of China, hopefully long before anything happens in the Pacific. So that's kind of an update on my behalf, and I'll take some questions in a minute, but I really want to wrap where I started, and that is the people are the most important part of this. And I thank all of you for being here today. I thank all of you for the contributions you make to the military health system and to the defense industrial base every single day. And it's really a privilege for me to be able to stand up here and address you as you kick off a great few days here of exchanging best practices, ideas from all over the world to make our system better and to help us serve that war fighter in the foxhole the very best way we can, because I approach every problem as that paratrooper battalion commander, thinking about that young 18-year-old paratrooper who just laced up his boots and got out of his harness and is moving out and drawing fire. So with that, I will take questions, Sierra.
All right, well, there's no questions online yet, so that means that people have to come up to the microphones. And if you'll see, they're up here towards the front so that we can actually see you, because otherwise it becomes kind of a bottomless pit towards the back.
There's only 5,000 people in here, so there's got to be one question.
Hey, sir. Colonel Mary Cardiff, Edwards Air Force Base. You mentioned the efficiencies in running our MHS as a business. We know that we are understaffed across most of our facilities, and when we do get staffing, we have the balance between the service-owned personnel and then the DHA or defense-funded personnel. What is your intent for ramping up on that on the DHA side as far as making sure that we have enough staffing to provide safe care to meet our business model?
So can you I did not understand.
I know, it was a little choppy, but the main question, ma'am, is what are we doing for the DHA?
Can we have some more people?
They need more people in the DHA. They're understaffed at the clinics and the hospitals.
So I feel like I'm back in Afghanistan. Sarah's my interpreter. We need more people in DHA. So where in DHA, I guess? Is it, down in the trenches or up in the planning or?
In the trenches, sir, for the most part. When you look at, so we have the service-funded, is it better if I talk slower? I know I talk too fast.
Yeah, so.
We have the service-funded personnel. So when the Air Force, for us, decides to bring in more people, the service decides where they go. And so if they're line-funded medics, then they go where the line says, but that's decided there. We are often having to balance between the line-funded medics and where they go, and then the DHP-funded resources, which have been dwindling. Our civilians are gone. It's been a challenge to meet that requirement while still meeting our readiness mission because we're balancing the personnel in those two different pots of money.
All right.
Sir?
Yes.
As a good assistant secretary, I can jump on that grenade during the next.
No, hang on. There's a microphone right
I'm
here.
gonna stand closer to you, sir.
Keith Bass is gonna.
Yeah.
Here you go.
I said, as a good assistant secretary, I'm happy to jump on that grenade because that was actually part of something that I'm going to talk about in the next. I mean, obviously, that's one of our big issues right now, right? And we'll just be transparent about it. Is we have 130,000 plus workforce. We're about 28,000 short. Where do we put the right people at the right place at the right time? And we got to be real smart about that placement of folks. And we're working very closely with our senior leaders over here, the SGs, to make sure that we're putting the right people in these facilities. That's why Secretary Tata talked a little bit about Fort Gordon and the rescoping, and so we're taking like a data-driven approach to that. And we're also looking at, what's our primary mission? Support the warfighter. So we have that mission, we have that risk, we have that right and responsibility to do that, but we also have a responsibility to backfill the MTFs. We're working very closely with Admiral Bai to make sure that we have a plan to do that, and that one of the things that we can do is I hear it all the time. Let's go get some civilians. Let's hire civilians. Let's put them in there. What's the problem with civilians? They're great, by the way. I am a civilian, but they don't go to war. So right, exactly. So we hear you, we understand it, and we're working on it. But thank you for having a voice and bringing that up, and letting me talk about that early on Mr. Tata's time, so Secretary Tata's time. So we'll talk about that a little bit in a few more minutes.
Thanks, Keith. I was going to say almost exactly what you said, although more succinctly and briefly. When I think about the core of that question, what we're doing with the service change request, and we're husbanding resources to move people to different locations to fill those necessary gaps where there's a perception that you may not have enough people. It's that the people are in the wrong place, and that gets back to the conversation that we had last night. So thank you, Keith, for saving me there. Other questions?
Still nothing online. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, well, I have one.
I thought we had a couple of plants out there. Didn't we?
I know, they must have wilted. So as we pivot in the MHS, the DHA as a combat support agency, we've been very focused over the last few years in the direct care system, the day-to-day, but we're pivoting our focus to the combat support agencies, the operational mindset. What would you say from your portfolio, sir, would be the most important for us to focus on?
Readiness. The entire system is built to provide that paratrooper in the foxhole the critical care that he or she needs. And so I start with readiness in mind, and then we reverse engineer from there. And so that's part of the service change request. We could not get yelled at by congressmen and senators and just leave everything the way it is and let there be gaps in the system, to the previous question. But we know that those doctors at Eisenhower or wherever are not seeing the complexity of the patients that they need to see, and therefore are not ready. And so from a readiness standpoint, we submitted this big giant aspirin tablet we're asking Congress to swallow that is a service change request to be able to de-scope and re-scope and move people around. And that movement is not just because it's somebody's good idea. It is a good idea, but it's to be able to make our medical professionals more ready. I don't know if anybody watched the now 15 months ago or so, Senate Armed Services Committee hearing with the former DHA director, former Surgeon General of Joint Staff, and one other doctor, but they said that our military healthcare system is 10% ready right now to go to war, and that was them. And they talked about the Walker dip, and when you're in combat and you're seeing complex patients every day, multiple times a day, unfortunately, like we saw in Iraq and Afghanistan, you're very ready because that's all you're doing. And then that dip happens when you have relative peacetime and you're not seeing the complexity of cases. And so for me, it's all about getting the people to the right place to see the volume of patients that have the complexity needed to train these rising surgeons, rising nurses, rising medics, rising specialists, anesthesiologists, et cetera, on these complex cases so that we can serve the men and women. What I don't want is that paratrooper in the foxhole to be the bill payer for an untrained medical health system.
Thank you, sir. The questions are rolling in now, so that's good. So I'll just double check. All right. How are senior leaders working to ensure seamless coordination between the services?
How are senior leaders working to ensure seamless coordination between the services? I think that Keith Bass and his team are doing a great job. Darren Vi with the Surgeons General. I just saw Mary Azagarian here somewhere, right there, and other Surgeons General here as well. Thank you for being present today. They're the true, lead sled dogs on this, with the Army, Navy, and Air Force, and then beneath the Navy and Air Force, Marine Corps, and the Space Force, being able to integrate all of that guidance and policy so that we are able to take care of whomever is out there, and it requires coordination. There are a lot of different senior leader categories. There's the White House that has expectations, and the national security team over there. There's the interagency with whom we work closely. There's Congress that we have to deal with their vested interest in jobs in certain military treatment facilities. And then for me, it's working with the Surgeons General and Keith and Steve before him, and then and Darren. So making sure that everybody, it's all about communication with the team here.
Sir, thank you. I have one about cognitive monitoring, which you should be familiar with as of recent. So you recently, as the department, we decided to change the cognitive monitoring program, or the tool specifically used for that. Could you give a little background about the reason for the change and how the tool will help?
Change in...
The change from the ANAM to the deployed overseas cognitive monitoring program that we're using.
I haven't heard
Oh, sorry.
Cognitive monitoring.
Yes.
Okay. It had the answer written on there, so that's why I had to look at it. No, the echo up here, if the microphones get a little close. Is Trish Passman here? I don't know. Colonel Patricia Passman is leading the Occupational Safety and Brain Health, TBI, program for us in readiness, and we've recently moved from ANAM to a company called Cognitron, and from my point of view, what I've been pushing Trish to do is get me something a squad leader can sit in front of his 9 people or her 9 people and say, 2 minutes where I'm assessing your brain health. And, the Rangers came up and saw, and so that's kind of what Cognitron is. I think it's maybe 5 minutes, but it can be deployed all the way down. It's an app, it's online, it's on your phone, it's on a tablet, as opposed to you having to come to where A&M is and that kind of thing. So user-friendly, A&M's like 50 years old. This is relatively new. And we should be monitoring the brain health of every new recruit coming in, 250,000. It should be just done, instantly. I was the XO of a basic training company, my first assignment in the Army. You could have them done in a couple hours. 200 people, push them through, get their brain health, put in their medical record, and then if they have an event, if they're a paratrooper like me and land on their head too many times, then you can have it. You can do the immediately if somebody's unconscious or as I was after several jumps, or if they're potentially have a TBI, traumatic brain injury from a blast or whatever, the medic can instantly do it right there, and you can see the difference. And what I want is real-time monitoring, not something that's archaic and 50 years old. And that was the big reason for the change. And the Rangers are using a mouth guard with an accelerometer in it. You get vertical, horizontal, and rotational spin of the brain, and it has sort of pull from duty, return to duty type Bluetooth. The mouth guard Bluetooth connects to a tablet, says Tata just took an 80G hit on his jump, and so let's let him sit out for a little while. So that kind of thing.
Thank you, sir. I think that answers the question. We've got a gentleman standing there.
Good morning, Secretary. Colonel Craig Ryan, Air Force Medical Group Commander at Incirlik Air Base, Turkey. Curious to know if there's appetite or discussion for streamlining some of our partnerships with civilian hospitals in relationship to graduate medical education. Seems like there's a lot of opportunity there. And I know some of us in this room are program directors and such, or have been there in the past. And just wondering if that's in your wheelhouse or in your team's wheelhouse right now. Sir.
Yeah, that's great. Cape Fear Valley Regional Medical System, we've established a partnership with WOMAC, Army Medical Hospital at Fort Bragg. I know that in Washington, D.C., we have a partnership, and I'm going to get the name wrong.
Kaiser Permanente.
Kaiser Permanente. So that is another area where we're sending doctors to their hospitals to be able to get the exposure we need, to get the training, to get the reps and sets, to get the whatever you want to call it, the exposure to the complex cases that our doctors need.
Thank you.
And there's more where our team, so there's a service change request, there's a work with the VA, and there's a work with the civilian institutions. All of that is aimed at readiness.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I think we have time for probably one or two more questions. So back to the pharmaceutical expansion, you discussed bringing pharmaceutical production back to America. Will this be a government-private collaboration, or is this focused on energizing the private sector?
Hopefully it'll be private sector, because government we can incentivize. The offer that we have is from the private sector. And so what we want to do is use, let me get on this side over here, we have $10 billion in purchasing power. The Veterans Administration has $10 billion in contract purchasing power for pharmaceuticals. Dr. Oz and CMS has $100 billion. So you might ask why they're not doing it. They're great partners, but let's face it, the Department of War is the G.I. Joe action figures. We get stuff done. We're moving at pace. I don't want to wait. The Secretary doesn't want to wait. So we're out there pulling this together. And if at the end we give it to HHS and they declare victory, so be it. I'm good with that. But the entire point is to leverage $120 billion in purchasing power and being able to incentivize somebody to take the business risk of starting this business back up, because there used to be a pretty healthy pharmaceutical industry in Puerto Rico. The tax breaks sunset, and so it all went to China and India. And so it's incentivized by government with some strategic capital, but it will be a private industry effort run by private industry. And there's all kinds of rules and regulations that if they get a loan from the government, they have to pay it back with monies not made from government entities. So, which means they have to have offtake agreements globally that will service that debt. So incentivized by government, built by private industry.
Thank you, sir. All right, we're going to do one more, because I think this one's a good one, and then we'll wrap it up. Can you speak to the importance of congressional advocacy in garnering support for MHS priorities and resourcing needs?
Yeah, congressional support is key. They're the oversight. Just reference the hearing that we just had, where Keith had his conversation about Express Scripts with Senator Warren. And we've got a follow-up, I'm sure, and then I think we've got something with the House Armed Services Committee in July, is what I'm hearing. So, of course, it's important to have Congress, the House and the Senate, both fully informed, and they're not necessarily going to be 100% on your side, because you can imagine the congressmen and senators from Georgia and South Carolina aren't exactly thrilled that we're de-scoping the size of Eisenhower Medical Center from an outpatient or inpatient to an outpatient, for example. And that gets back to the senior leader question. We've all got to be of one mind, talking to, saying the same things to our Congress folks that represent the areas where we've got, whether it's BAMC or Madigan or Tripler or whatever. We've all got to be tightly aligned with the mission from the Secretary down to Honorable Bass, down to the Surgeons General, and out through the field, supportive of this overall vision and concept that is really the Secretary's concept. He's been briefed on it. He's made changes to it. He understands it. He's asking why we're not moving faster, which is sort of a standard question. Regardless of how fast we're moving, let's move faster. He wants to make change, and he wants to service that paratrooper in the foxhole. So,
thank you so much, sir. It's been a pleasure having you up here and hearing your priorities and your strategic vision of how things work.
Vision, right?
Vision, sir.
Thank you, Sierra. And let me just finish by saying, again, thank you all for everything that you're doing to make us better, whether you're industry, whether you're part of the military health system in the one of the compos, or a department civilian, or a family member. I really appreciate what you're doing. You're critical to how we function. You're critical to the future of military health. And I hope you have a great conference. And truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much.